Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. It's Tuesday. We've been off a couple Tuesdays now, but I'm ready now to start the new mini-series that Ben and me have discussed. So he came up with this idea, gave me a few examples and a few things. So I took some of his examples, added my own, and I came up with a six episode mini series that we're going to do called Nomads. So what is this all about? Okay, so basically you know that there's those musicians that seem to play on everybody's album. You know, they've played with other bands, they've played their solo stuff, they've played on different albums for different sessions for different people. There's lots of people like this out there. And I've decided to start with this guy because he is actually premier in that area. We're talking about John Wetton of King Crimson fame and also of Asia, quite a few bands actually, but we're going to discuss all that. I'm going to talk a little bit about his discography history and his history in general, a little bit about his abilities, what makes him special, and my own personal stuff. Probably throw in some other information as we go along as well. But tonight it's John Wetton on Nomads. Episode 1, here we are. So the first thing about John Wetton, of course, is that he came around probably in the late 60s, early 70s period of time, getting into music there. And he stayed with it right up till his death in 2017. Yeah, it's a tragedy, to be honest with you. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the abilities he had. So he was primarily a bass player who was also a lead vocalist, and he was good at both of those. I wouldn't venture to say which one he was better at. I think of him, personally, I think of him as a vocalist. He has a fantastic vocal sounding voice. Very, very similar to Greg Lake. In fact, so similar I can't really tell them apart. I guess if I listen to them both at the same time, I might be able to. I'm not sure, but I've been listening to these two guys for now over 40 years. I'm still not 100% sure. Unless I know for a fact that one's singing a song, I'm not 100% sure. They sound so much alike. And, of course, his bass ability is really critical. He's a really solid bass player. Very forward in his bass playing. I think he's one of the better bass players out there. Just fantastic. He also does play some, on occasion I've seen him play organ. I've also seen him play some acoustic guitar as well. So yeah, so he does have abilities beyond just the two obvious ones that most people know about. So my personal history with him is I came into him on this album. I didn't know who he was. When this album first came out, I knew I got into it right away because it was Steve Howe. Steve Howe was absolutely one of my favorite musicians. I knew who Carl Palmer was. It was pretty obvious he was from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And then Jeff Downes, of course, I knew from his time with Yes. But I didn't know anything about John Wetton. He was new to me. Except for when I first heard him, I thought, wow, this guy sounds so much like Greg Lake, you know. So, fantastic singer, fantastic vocalist. But my problem that occurred with him is that, like, he didn't get along with Steve Howe initially. They had problems, and Steve Howe left Asia. And I kind of being because I was still like young, like 17, 18, I developed a kind of a dislike for him for that reason. That's not uncommon. I was like that as a kid, judgmental as hell. It's amazing I made it out of my childhood, to be honest. But I've since grown out of that. I recognize this guy's a truly talented individual with lots of stuff to offer. So we're going to go over some of that stuff now. You have to excuse me for a second. So we're going to talk a little bit first. I think I was going to talk about his session stuff first, but I decided we're going to talk about the bands he was with first. So in 1971, he was with Mogul Thrash. I don't know a lot about Mogul Thrash. I just know that he was with the band. In 71 to 72, he's with a band called Family. And then, of course, he, in 73, joined King Crimson for a 3-year stint, along with Bill Bruford and Robert Fripp. One of their better times, some of their better albums, Red here being one of them. Just a great, great musician, adding such fantastic vocals to a legendary band, I think. After that, he went and spent about a year or so in 75, 76 with Uriah Heep. This is kind of a weird mix here. I can see him doing it, but I don't see how he really fit into that band so well. I don't know much about his time with them. I just know he played with them. He then played for a year, or he played with Roxy Music in 76 as well. Then moved on and formed UK with Bill Bruford and Alan Holdsworth, and I believe, the keyboardist's name eludes me right now. But anyways, he was with them, and then there was a little bit of... So it was a really good... The first album was really good. It was kind of what you would expect from people of this talent to be playing this progressive rock. The second album was much more mainstream, and a couple of guys, Bruford and the keyboardist, left, and they brought in some new people. I think I can think of the drummer. I can't think of his name either. But anyways, I actually liked the second album much better. I thought it was a much better album. And kind of thought, like it's more commercial, but then that's the direction in which he wanted to go. But they did such a great job on it. It was fantastic. They did reunite a couple times, 2015 and 2016. He played with a band called Jackknife in 1979, and then another band of which most people will know, Wishbone Ash in 81, which seems like another one of those odd marriages, but he seems to have made it fit. And then they formed Asia in 1982, and this went on through 1991. So he was with the band for about 9 years, his longest stint with anybody, really. And then he came back in 2007 and 8, and then again in 2010, 2014. So a fairly lengthy stint with Asia. And to me, when I think of Asia, it's his vocals that are the dominant part of Asia, as far as I'm concerned. The guitar is toned down a lot. Keyboards are good, but just okay. And Carl Palmer is, doing his thing, which he's also toned down. So the only thing that was really outstanding with them is the singing, which was, I think, memorable. After Asia, he played with a band called Quango, I think, for the year 2000, and then Icon in 2002 to 2006, 2009 to 2012, and 2016. Icon, I think, was his collaboration with, was it Jeff Downes? I believe it was with Jeff Downes. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. He also had a fairly extensive solo career that went from 1980 to 2011, working with various artists and various albums and various soundtracks. So he had that going on for a while as well. Then I'll talk a little bit about his session stuff. I'm not going to list everything on his session stuff. It's too extensive, but I will mention the people, but I might not talk too much about them. Gordon Haskell was his initial one back in 1971. The album was It Is, It Isn't. He played organ, bass, keyboards, vocals, and guitar on this album in bits and pieces at times. Larry Norman was next, Only Visit This Planet, 1972. Maycomb and Alwyn, Fool's Wisdom was the name of the album, 1973. Peter Banks of Yes fame, of course, Two Sides of Peter Banks. He played the bass on the album and also did the album cover, which I did not know he was capable of, but he did do. He then moved on, played with Brian Eno. Here Comes the Warm Jet, 1973. He played bass on that. Peter Seinfeld, also of King Crimson fame. The album was Still. Also played on this with Greg Lake, Gordon Haskell, and Mel Collins, all defunct members of King Crimson as well. You had some Brian Ferry stuff, Another Time, Another Place, 1974, Let's Stick Together, 1976, In Your Mind, 1977, The Bridge Stripped Bare, 1978. Wow, that was hard to get out. Live at the Royal Albert Hall in 2020. Then he played with Phil Manzanera. I played with him in 75 and 78 on Diamond Head and K-Scope. Duncan McKay, I did the score in 1977. Roger Chapman, Mail Order Magic. Hyenas Only Laugh for Fun in 1981. And then Phenomena, I think that's how you say it, Did It All for Love in 1987, which was a single. The next thing he did, go back here a little bit. So in addition to that, I'm not going to go on too much. I'm just going to list some of the other people. David Cross, Exiles, 1997. Steve Hackett, Genesis Reunited, 1997. He did the vocals on that. Tokyo Tapes, 1998 with Steve Hackett, I believe. Genesis Revisited, and again in 2012, did the vocals, guitar, and bass. Other acts he's been with: Martin Orford, Gallahan, Daniel Liverani, Billy Sherwood, Martin Turner's version of Wishbone Ash, Alan Simon, Eddie Jobson, that was the guy, I forgot the keyboardist from UK, Arion, and Renaissance. So he's been around and done a lot of stuff, this guy. Showing his talents everywhere he could, and obviously well loved because so many people had him on their album. Personally, I think he's a great bass player. I loved his vocal stuff. As a person, I've never really kind of warmed up to him 100%. There are things about him that I'm not crazy about, but you cannot deny the man's talent, and he deserves to be one of the episodes for Nomad. In fact, he is the first episode for Nomad. And I think, this is a guy I think I need to explore a lot more of this stuff that he's done. There's a lot of stuff out there, so no shortage of John Wetton stuff to look into. So I hope you've enjoyed this first episode of Nomad. It will come out tonight at 8 o'clock. That's the plan, to have them all at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. Please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. And any comments about him, if you want to add stuff in, you can. There's so much stuff, it'd be impossible, I think, to get all of his. Well, it wouldn't be impossible, but it would take more time than already way over time here. And I hope to see you on episode 2 next Tuesday night. And we'll let you know who we're going to be featuring when we do this week on Sunday. So take care and have yourself a good night and a good evening. Goodbye.